It's crazy to me how often people cherry pick Bible verses in order to support their own agenda. In any case, let's look at 2 Bible verses that people believe entail socialism. To start, Acts chapter 2 verses 44 through 45 states, "All who believed were together and had everything in common. They sold property and possessions to give to anyone who had need." Further, Acts chapter 4 verses 32 through 35 states, "No one claimed that any of their possessions was their own, but they shared everything they had, and there were no needy persons among them." Now, I'm not gonna lie, at first glance, these verses seem incredibly socialist, but when we read on in the chapter, we get more context into the lives of these early Christians when we get to Acts chapter 5 verses 1 through 4, where we learn a story about a man named Ananias and his wife Sapphira, where he sold a piece of property, but kept back some of the proceeds for himself. And they brought only a portion of the proceeds to lay at the apostles' feet. And to this, Peter talked to Ananias and said, "Why has Satan filled your heart to lie to the Holy Spirit and keep back some of the proceeds for yourself?" And in Acts chapter 5 verse 4, this conversation ends with Peter telling Ananias, "While it remained unsold, did it not remain your own? And after it was sold, was it not at your disposal? You have not lied to man, but you have lied to God." And the lie here was that Ananias wanted to look more generous than he was. When he got money back for the property he sold, he wanted it to look like he was giving it all to the apostles, but he actually kept some of that money for himself. But the big takeaway here is that the property belonged to Ananias. Ananias had the right to not sell it, and even after selling it, the money was his to keep. So in this case, his problem was lying, not keeping the money. Which shows that the early church encouraged generosity, but they did not abolish the right to private property, and they did not force redistribution. Now, I know at this point, some people might object and say, well, Ananias had private property, which shows that there wasn't communism, but there was still socialism. And to that objection, I would counter by saying in the earlier Act verses, all we really see is that people were sharing. And socialism is not simply when people share. Socialism is a system. And what I mean by this is that in these verses, we see no stipulations stating that people must give. We see no punishments laid out for not giving, and we see no authority that enforces redistribution. So since there's no state mandate, what we really have here is voluntary charity, which is not socialism. It's also the case that we have a scale problem because the church does not equal the society, and socialism is a model for entire societies, whereas Acts describes behavior inside a voluntary religious community. Thus, in closing, if you want to live under a socialist economic system, that's fine, but don't make the text say something it didn't say in order to support your desires.